For the moment. For the moment. If I thought it was something, we'll wait till more comes out. Okay. That one. There we go. Yep. Here we go. We are live. No question about it. Good afternoon, everybody. Not that we had much of a weekend. There I am on X. Yep. Let me check the connection. I think it sounds good. There I am on X. Yep. Let me check the connection. I think it sounds good. And it does. All right. Now, we are live in just 2 minutes. 2 minutes. We are live. They did. I'm tempted to. No, I'm not going to run craft because there's other places to get it. There's other places to get it. We're not going to roll with it. No, there's other places that people can get that info. So, thus, we're gonna pass for now. Okay, we're gonna be live in just a minute. Yep. Yes, that is exactly right. Okay. This is religious lies. Sometimes it feels like it is. Sometimes it feels like it is. And there we go, folks. 106. Happy January 6th, Trespassing Day. That is exactly right. It is a big day here on the program. First full week of this new year, which is off to a rocking start, by the way. It's Monday, J6th, in this portion of our program. Now, we had a very busy weekend because of Friday on the website, which is dpetro.com, which serves a very unique purpose for me anyway. There are people, see, I believe it all comes down to content. And if you check out dpetro.com, we have more information about our story from Friday with West Greenwich than any other, quote, news source. We don't follow the other news sources. We don't. And if we did, now there are people that prefer that, understood. But check out dpetro.com because there's a wealth of things there, including all of the video from Friday. We're the only ones that have the picture of both father and mother. We basically have everything right there. And then on top of that, we have links to all of our social media, whether it's our YouTube channel, TikTok, obviously Facebook, and also Instagram. It's a happening, and it's brought to you by the Coesit Inn, 226 Coesit Avenue, West Warwick. Lunch, dinner, drinks in the lounge, plus the market at Coesit. They're waiting for you at the Coesit Inn. And folks, as I talk about, it's plenty of safe parking. It's free parking. It is the Coesit Inn is a great place to gather. Stop in and see them, the Coesit Inn. Now, I want to start off. I posted, we're going to be talking about starting off the real news with West Greenwich. And sometimes I can pay attention a lot to what some of the comments are. Other times, I don't have time to do that. I will tell you, I received a number of messages over the course of the weekend of people's like, what's the latest? What's the latest? Now, Again, it's all on the website, depetro.com. You learn a lot by doing social media and doing it at the level that we do. Um, People don't read. People expect everything spoon fed to them. Let me say this about the situation and the horrible situation that played out on Friday. You could see the police, the first responders were clearly rattled. And I also want to say this about some of the family and friends. Now, like everyone else, I would pray and hope that I never have a situation remotely close to that in my family. However, I know this: if I did, I'll tell you what I wouldn't be doing. I would not be on my page taking out anger. I understand of course, they should have anger. And there's a lot of questions that need to be resolved. And I want to talk about some different elements of this. Um, it's hard to believe that there weren't any warning signs. Now, I don't know either family. We do know, the pregnant wife. By the way, this is also the first time TikTok is its own universe of plagiarists. They call themselves creators. All they do is rip off information they get, try to pass it off as their own. In Greenwich, Rhode Island, they're thinking Greenwich, Connecticut. But there's still a lot of questions about what happened, such as were there any warning signs? Many times we don't know until the police release all their findings, if the police release all their findings. So there's a couple different parts about this. Number one, for someone to commit that type of act, I'll just say this: we don't know. And again, you can log on. There are some people, I get it. There are some people, they're still, they are children, and I don't they're adults. I don't mean that as a compliment. They expect everything to be fed to them. We don't operate that way. I don't operate that way. If you don't understand the definition of a word, I don't know about you, there's so many resources now. You Google it and find out. If you don't understand something, it's on you to find that. I find a lot of people, their habits, they expect everything fed to them. It doesn't work that way, or I don't work that way. But these family and friends upset, take this down. No one should be talking about it. Blah, blah, blah. If there's any anger, it should be directed at the individual whose photo that we have on depetro.com. That's where the anger should be. And maybe some of it's guilt. Maybe they saw signs and they didn't do anything. All right, ready? Here's a question. Where did that individual get the weapon? I don't know the answer to that. I think that'd be important. I also want to touch on, and I'm going to come to it, this whole business. There are some people, it's interesting. We had nurses and other people commenting that were, oh, by the way, let me just share one thing. There are some people, and again, the thing about social media is you have to realize these are people that most of the time we would never encounter. And what I mean by that is there are people out there that I would never work with them. I would never associate with them. I don't run in their circles. We didn't grow up together. So therefore, I would never have any type of interaction. Do you know when we posted the photo of the person that committed the act, there were people that were saying, wait a minute, is he alive? No, there was this invention called the photograph. Wait a minute, if that's a picture of him, is he alive? There are, I think there's photos of Abraham Lincoln. I mean, the photograph is not a new invention. Wait a minute. If there's a photo, is he alive? No, many times there's a photo of someone who might be deceased For instance, I couldn't find it after that. Like the people put comments that I would never think of. For instance, when I saw the photo of the New Orleans suspect, I didn't think, wait a minute, is he still alive? No, no, they found a photo of him. Or they found video. Wait a minute, there's video of him talking. Is he still alive? No, no, they're not alive. It's a photograph. Wow. I mean, that's the level that we're at sometimes. But I want to touch on this. There's different parts of this, and I think it's really important. By the way, folks, this portion of our program, though, as we kick off things, this first full week of 2025, is brought to you by Propane Plus. Call Propane Plus today, 401-885-4209 in Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. Heating and cooling for all your propane needs. Call Propane Plus today. They also have a very user-friendly website, both residential and commercial. It's Propane Plus. Just put in your zip code, boom. Propane Plus. Call them in Rhode Island, 401-885-4209, and in Massachusetts, 508-252-3359 for Propane Plus. I understand there was a nurse that said many times they deal with people, a lot of times it's family members. They think that if it's not talked about, then it's not real, then it's not happening. And it's kind of reaction to that. Many times, somewhere today, someone in the country, in the state, in the world is finding out that not them, but a loved one has a terminal illness. Now, some people say, oh my goodness, that's terrible. I want to go see whoever that person may be, mother, father, grandmother, whoever. Other people say, no, I think they'll be fine. They immediately put up the walls, go into denial. It's interesting. Many years ago, I knew this couple that they learned their son had autism. And if you encountered the wife, she talked about it nonstop. She talked about their efforts in dealing with it. If you talk to the husband, he would be like, no, he's fine. No, he's fine. My son is fine. Total denial. So in this particular case, there's someone and a lot of times, I don't like people that can't make a point without insulting others. But there's someone named Sean who is posting the photograph of the person responsible in West Greenwich. Should not be made public. No one should see it. No one should know his name, anything. I want to just play that out. Now, again, it's not going to, I encounter this all the time. But I want to just play that out a little bit. If we followed that logic, let's leave this situation. Let's go to 9/11. Folks, can you imagine if we lived in a world where they announced that they knew the people responsible for the planes hitting the tower and crashing in Pennsylvania, hitting the Pentagon, but the media said, but we're not going to release them. We're not going to show who they are, their names or photographs. What do you think the result of that decision would be? I still remember the first time I saw those eyes of Muhammad Atta, right? Who was really like the leader of the first plane that hit the North Tower. The evil and anger in his eyes. So, but if we play that out, what if we learned, even recently, that you had a situation where someone ran those people over in New Orleans, but we're not going to show who it is. And we're not going to, nothing, no name, nothing. How about, can you imagine this past summer? There was someone that fired at President Trump and struck him, by the way, and then even killed one person at the rally. We're not going to release his name. And we're not going to show you what he looked like. What these people don't understand is it's not a new phenomenon. By the way, also, it has nothing to do with me. These morons, I think they live in fear. Because you go back to, can you imagine, look at, the Kennedy assassination. which is still to this day unresolved. And who really did it? And was it? Can you imagine if there's all this and we know what Oswald looked like? Can you imagine if we didn't know what he looked like? You just go through different events of history if they didn't show who did it. When you see the school shooters, many times when we identify who it is that committed this atrocious act, whatever it may be, especially after they're deceased, I don't want to give them the popularity. I get that. I mean, I'm not saying you want to set up a platform where someone can profit from it. That's actually even called the Son of Sam law. But I believe it falls under, there are people that feel if they, but here's the part I want to stress to people. If you feel that way, what people need to understand is the onus is on yourself to avoid the news. And what I mean by that is, if you're greatly disturbed, again, let's just go outside. If you were greatly disturbed by what happened to President Trump, and it was frightening, and how many times did we see the rally and him, the ear and the blood and the fight, fight, fight? If you're greatly disturbed by that, then you shouldn't watch it. If you're greatly disturbed by various things in the news, then it's imperative to you not to watch that. You know, it's almost akin to young children should not watch certain content before they're going to go to sleep. You know, I mean, there have been child psychologists that have talked about that. There were kids that, and we certainly weren't allowed to, but there were kids that, and even today, they're watching things that that then give them nightmares before they go to sleep. But my point is, the onus is on the individual to not see that. If there's someone who's greatly disturbed by that, then they shouldn't watch it. However, what I find is these people, and it's kind of the way I like the nurse that came on and said they feel that if they don't see it, it's not real. Now, I agree. It's a very immature way of looking at things. It is. And it's a very immature, childish way, really. I know of someone, I won't say who, but I know of someone who won't go to a wake, has never been to a wake. Nope. Won't go to a funeral. No way. No way. Not go. That's not dealing with reality. There's also, by the way, there's also many times what people need to understand is there's still many things to be learned after. For instance, the let's just talk whether it's a school shooter or whether it's the New Orleans terrorists or that guy out in Vegas. It's many times after the fact that people see the person and say, wait a minute, I remember that person. I encountered that person. But there are some people, and I don't know, maybe if they're watching television, they can flip the channel and it's their choice. Maybe if they pick up there are people that say, I don't read the newspaper. It's all bad news. That's just the way they look at it. And I get that many times. You watch it's the news, and it can be. Why is it? Because it's news. It's anything that's out of the ordinary. So they feel that if they see something that makes them uncomfortable, they go into the fetal position. No one should see that. Take that down. No, don't you understand? It's still, there are questions. Were there warning signs? We learn from these things. Maybe some people don't realize that, but many times, because of Columbine, schools changed how they did security. Because of Kennedy, JFK, Secret Service changed how they operate. Because of what just happened to Trump, once again, the Secret Service is changing. Because of what just happened in New Orleans, other large gathering places are adopting that you can't just have it wide open because some nutcase may ride on the sidewalk. Because of 9/11, we changed our security. Nothing is accomplished when you go under the desk, under the bed, fetal position, no one talk about it, blah, blah, blah. It's their own uncomfortableness and they want to, it's actually when they say, I don't want to give that person any type, what they're really, it's not about the killer. It's not about whoever did it. It's actually about them. And they're very uncomfortable about it. So now I also want to mention, as far as, the police can do whatever they want. As soon as I saw the state police on scene, I said to someone in the media, well, they're not going to say anything tonight. And they're not even going to say anything this weekend. One of the members of the media on Friday was saying, well, I think there's going to be a press conference today. I'm like, there's no way. State police never, never. Wait, when was what was the state police, if they get involved, what was the last press conference the Rhode Island State Police did? I mean, you guys see, I'll cover Warwick, I'll cover Cranston, I'll cover Pawtucket, obviously Providence. State Police Coventry maybe did one, maybe last year. So as soon as I saw their arrival, that means, okay, nothing's happening. But it doesn't mean we can't put out the information that we have. So, and again, there's a lot of different parts to this. But the latest is, listen, this is horrible. But any anger out there, any anger from friends and family, I come back to, what would it say as a society if something like this happens, where you have a pregnant mother and two young children, 5 and 2, taken out in a murder-suicide? What would it say if then no one talked about it? I want to remove myself. And I also want to remind people, folks, if a newspaper does a great job, people can always say, well, they just want to sell newspapers. If television does a good job, well, they just want ratings. A player makes a big play and scores a touchdown. Well, he just wants to get a big payday. A politician does something. Well, he just wants to get votes and get elected. I mean, you can always come back to that. Someone's on a date. There's 2 gay men. One buys the other a drink. Well, he just wants to get me alone. I mean, you could always come back to that. So, but it doesn't, I mean, this business of everything posted, well, they just want clicks. Well, boy, that Governor DeSantis, he really took a tough stand. Well, he just wants to get votes. Boy, that newspaper, they did a great job with that story and investigation. They're just trying to sell newspaper. I mean, you can always come back to that. But then you have to look beyond that and say, okay, no one's saying that is true, but that's always true. That's true no matter what it is. Yes, those athletes that are making great plays on the football, it is true. Full disclaimer, they are getting paid. And when you make incredible plays like that, you do actually make more money. That's true. It doesn't take away from what was done. When President Trump would be giving a big speech, he just wants to get elected. Well, that's true. Okay, thank you, Captain Obvious. But it doesn't take away from, if you have a firefighter who bravely runs into a house and removes someone and saves them from a burning building, I suppose you could always say, well, that's their job. Okay, but we also just saw recently in New York where there was a woman on fire in a subway and a police officer walked by her. So the disclaimer people put out, for instance, with the West Greenwich situation, I mean, what we do know, it is on DePietro.com. It is. And then, listen, I share it. We have platforms. We share the information. People are interested. People reach out to me. Do you have it? And I say, check the website. And no matter how many times you put it out there, you have people that don't know and so forth. But I don't think I know we can't be dictated by people who they want to block it out. And there was one individual, his name was Sean. Don't show whoever. They don't recognize. You go to any high profile incident. Now, I understand you have the extreme example like in New York, where you have people that then are like rallying around Luigi, who assassinated the head of United Healthcare. You could say, I don't think he should be profiting from it. I don't think they should be set. Okay, that's one thing. But to just shut it down, no, don't show him. Many times when you see who it is, it can add to the story. When they showed that guy in Colorado, right, Aurora. Okay, so a guy who looks like the Joker with orange hair went in and started shooting people in a movie theater. That as soon as you saw him, it looked off. As soon as we saw the gunman who shot Congresswoman um, Gabby Giffords, as soon as you saw him, I mean, the guy looked nuts. So many times we do learn things by that. So I know that some people, and it's not going to go away. It's not. But what you need to realize, and they forget about it, there are people that live very sheltered, immature lives. They need everything spoon fed to them. I don't like to watch the news. I don't like anything bad. There are people like that, but we can't let them be the loud voices. So there could be someone that could come forward and say, hey, I recognize that guy. I saw him practicing the weapon. I saw him, whatever, clues of information. Folks, this portion of our program, let's talk about something positive. It's brought to you by Kids Club on the Pike, birthday parties, before and after school programs, preschool programs, Kids Club on the Pike. If you're looking for a venue, maybe you're looking for somewhere that has before and after school programs or a preschool program, Kids Club on the Pike. Excuse me. They're right on Plainfield Pike, right on the Cranston Johnson line, right off of 295. It's Kids Club on the Pike, and it's fantastic. But this is perfect for a celebration. I see people say, anyone have any suggestions? A 9-year-old birthday party. They're not infants. They're going to run around a little bit. Kids Club on the Pike would be perfect. Look for them on Facebook. Well, folks, good afternoon at 1:31. And so, and I mean, the police, as we've talked about, we run into this, and people are so critical. When they finally just arrested Mark Perkins for the murder of Charlotte Lester. Well, those of you that followed the show and followed my investigative efforts on that, you already knew a lot of that. You knew that there was something about the mattress. You knew that he was the lead suspect. You knew there was a reason that they had found blood in the home, why the house was blocked off that way. Even then, even during that, the Charlotte Lester case, I had people saying, you shouldn't be talking about that. Stay out of the way. You're interfering with the police investigation. I used to talk to the Warwick police. You guys cool with what I'm doing? We're totally cool with what you're doing. No, you shouldn't even be talking about it. Let the police do their job. That's not your job. I mean, nonstop. I want you to understand. Clearly, I don't listen to those individuals. Because if you did, you wouldn't do anything like that. Now, I do want to, this is the anniversary of January 6th. How about that? Man held without bail after weekend shooting of New Hampshire police officer during a struggle. That is something that police have to deal with. That is something that police have to deal with. And many times we encounter people that are very critical of law enforcement. And as I have told you, and that is that, as we've seen, first of all, many, for quite some time, there are people that, for various reasons, are just very anti-law enforcement. Folks, what we're encountering right now is what I've talked about, and you saw it in New Orleans. You have to have law and order. The police are our urban soldiers. There are urban, that's who we rely on. Police are our line of defense against violence and anarchy. And there's a lot of people that want violence and anarchy, and the progressives in society. This story out of West Greenwich, like many of you, it's so disturbing. It's, as I said on Friday, it's an unimaginable crime. I no, I don't under it's tough to comprehend something like that. But we're not going to learn anything about it. We're not going to learn anything about it if everyone is then just quiet and we pretend. I'm willing to bet that, and they are. There are some family and friends. Here's my message to them. Any anger they have should be towards the individual that committed it, the crime, or maybe they harbor regret. Maybe there were warning signs. Maybe there were people that say it's none of my business, but he's been acting very odd. It's none of my business. I'm not saying anything. I'm staying out of it, but I think he just went and purchased a weapon. I don't know. I don't know. How did that individual get the weapon? I don't know the answer to that. There are tragically murder-suicides. You had, and how people react, for those of you, again, that watch Road Patrol Live, and right now it's 1:35 on this Monday, January 6th. A good example of it that we saw firsthand was that woman in Coventry, who, by the way, when we were in Coventry recently with the FBI search, rode by, honked, and I think that was her giving me the table for one salute. Nevertheless, but that was an example. In Coventry, you had someone who was older, retired, and it was a murder-suicide of him and the wife. I think he was a retired firefighter, if I remember correctly. I think he was a retired firefighter from Cranston. I think so. And I think he also he shot their dog. But for those of you that remember that, there was a woman on the street who should not have been outside, who should have been inside, or should have been away, should not have been there. But if you saw that and remember it, because it was pretty memorable, it was the Coventry neighbor that was telling the media, get off the street. You shouldn't be here. No one should be covering this. It falls into denial. This didn't happen. I live in this house, and the murder-suicide that we're hearing about, it didn't happen in the house right, 2 over from me, or next to me, or wherever the hell it was. So, and what was her? She was having such a breakdown over it. She tried to run down, not me, the photographer from Channel 10. Someone should have intervened. That was someone that was having a meltdown right there. Now, of course it's upsetting, and of course it's disturbing. But you have to ask, in a situation like that, is that helping the situation? People heard the gunshots. It was a murder-suicide. It was a huge police scene. The media's there. Her first reaction, I don't know who the person is. I don't remember who it is. Was she attacked? It was actually the reporter from Channel 10, and was telling him, you have to leave. And he's like, no, I'm on the sidewalk. And then if you watch, remember, when I'm there, she comes rolling over and says, everybody out, get off this street. And the police say, no, they're staying right there. They have every right to be there. The police, when we were there on Friday in West Greenwich, Chief Ramsey, what did he do? He used the media to say, I want to alert everyone in the area not to be concerned. There's no suspect we're looking for. No one should be alarmed. Despite that, despite the chief saying that, now that tells me immediately, okay, they don't have a suspect in custody and they're not looking for a suspect. So what does that mean? They don't have anyone in custody, they're not detaining anyone, and they're not looking for anyone. What does that tell me as someone that covers crime? It tells me the individual that committed it is deceased inside that residence. And by the way, that would be anywhere. If there was some kind of a shooting with New Orleans, they didn't say, and everyone should be on the lookout because the guy could be out there. So one of the first things they wanted to say was the person that committed this. In New Orleans, the guy was shot and killed by the police. But despite that, you have people. Well, someone could have gone in, done it. Should we be looking at? No, he just said the public should not be alarmed. My point is, they can't go around every person. They use that to get the info out to the people in the area. And what does that tell you? That people should not feel threatened. Many times when we're out at a crime scene and the police will say this was targeted, people in this area should not be concerned. And I want to be very clear. Now, that's not always the case. Sometimes there are people that just take someone out. It's very rare. There are people that sometimes may break into a home or a business and then they harm the person involved. Sometimes the extreme is you get like the serial person. That's true. That can happen. But more often than not, we were in South Providence back in August. It was a Sunday afternoon. There was a young man on his 18th birthday, was shot and killed. The people, the gunmen, the people involved, were they just going around the neighborhood shooting at anyone? No. They were still, by the way, looking for the suspects. Did they just happen to go to that house, break in, and then shoot them? No, they went there, targeted to take out that person. And most of the time, for those of you that watch when we do road patrol at night, which we did last night, subscriber only, it is a targeted situation. So, but you have to understand, the police, they can't be everywhere. So they do use the media to put it out there of, this is what happened. We are dealing with this. What did they find? They found 4 dead bodies inside. And all weekend long, I keep getting messages from people. What's the latest? What's the latest? Right now, we don't have a latest. But I think there is some parts of information here that people then want to know. And again, there's other cases that, I think it would be interesting to find out were there warning signs? And folks, the reason I say that is certainly not to blame any of the friends and family, but we learn about these things. And I want to go back to, I remember there were people with Columbine. I was on the air then. I was actually kind of even new at the time in Columbine. And even then, there were people, we shouldn't be talking about this. Don't talk about that. They found, with Columbine, they found weapons, ammo, bomb-making capabilities in their bedrooms. They put out word to parents. You should check. There was recently that Michigan school shooter. The parents are being held responsible for it. The father bought him a weapon. We learn and change things. The public does. Columbine changed security at schools. Columbine showed that if you don't have proper security, those 2 killers in Columbine were misfits. And remember the black trench coats, and they were bullied and clibbled, and then they ended their own life in the cafeteria. But Parkland in Florida, when these things happen, things can happen. And maybe as a result of West Greenwich, there are warning signs, and maybe someone sees that So, without knowing all of the details with West Greenwich, clearly the individual was having, horrible mental challenges that seemingly no one around him were picking up on. I mean, I don't think that's a stretch. Clearly, there was something going on. And with with the guy in New Orleans, the terrorist that did that, that guy was in a total spiral. Many times they're in a spiral before they commit something like this. So, if I remember the Coventry murder suicide correctly, if I remember correctly, I think the wife had been hinting, if I remember correctly, because it'll be 3 years this spring. I think the wife was hinting, I think it was. I don't remember now, but it could have been 23. Maybe it was 2 years ago now. I think the wife was hinting that she wanted a divorce. And if I fully remember it, they were visiting a relative in another state, and the man went into the safe of the relative and took the weapon and then left a note. So that's also, by the way, we don't know if a note was left. We don't know the condition of how these individuals were left. And I'm not trying to be Dr. Phil, but maybe someone picks up on something. Maybe as a result of this, someone says, wow, that sounds an awful lot like someone I work with. Maybe that sounds a lot like a relative. Maybe as a result of this, someone starts to think, boy, so and so was acting pretty odd at Christmas, or was acting very odd at New Year's, or is acting very odd in general. So no, we don't need photos of the crime scene. We don't need to know all the details of what the police and the first responders found. But sometimes when things like this are put forward, other people can see some warning signs. There's a lot of warning signs now for people, educators in school. When we saw last October in Maine, that guy that carried out that mass shooting, boy, there were a lot of red flags there. And there was an officer on his base that was saying, this guy seems really off. I think he's capable of doing something. Boy, Fort Hood also seems to be ground zero for some of these nuts that come out. But my point is, and with this terrorist that did this in New Orleans, what they're trying to piece together is, how did someone like that get radicalized? And the more that they put out to the public, the more they can learn more and track down information on that. The FBI just put out, it's a very impressive video about the individual. That was now 5 years ago. On January 5th, a lone wolf planted pipe bombs in DC, and he's a real pro about it. I shared the video on the Facebook page. And you want to talk about a professional and cautious, the way this guy operates. He's out there. It's 5 years later. The reward is 500,000. The video the FBI put together. Talk about cautious. He would walk down a street, walk back it, sit on a bench, get up, walk around, come back, sit on the bench. He's out there. Out there is someone that knows how to put together those types of explosives. And so they'll learn and they're still trying to track him down. Folks, this portion of the program is brought to you by Watson Materials. Happy New Year to everyone from Watson Materials, largest selection of landscape materials, Rhode Island, located South County Trail. Call them 401-885-0600. Watson Materials, the most complete selection of landscape materials, Rhode Island, landscape lighting, pavers, retaining walls, natural stone, cobblestone, decorative stone. Watson Materials, 401-885-0600, 401-885-0600. Again, the most complete selection of landscape materials in Rhode Island. It's Watson materials. Well, folks, good afternoon. At 1:48 on this 1:48 on this Monday, and it is January 6th, and there's a boy, this new year, we're 6 days in, and it is quite the new year. But I want to there's I think it's interesting that there are some people amongst us that, and I'm not trying to be a broken record, that they just don't follow the news. It disturbs them. But they also tend to be very loud voices. I think it's interesting. Again, the nurse, and then I heard from this other woman that said when they learned this woman, I won't say who, but they learned her father suddenly had terminal cancer. And it was really, sadly, a matter of 3 to 6 months. She said her brother announced he didn't want to talk about it. He didn't want anyone talking about it. He would shout it down and get very angry. And then when they were trying to get the family together, and I think I'll have to go back and read the email. It was in the summertime. So they're saying, do you want to come over? We're going to have a cookout. He said, I'll only come over if we're not going to talk about Dad's health. Now, again, that is how that individual is reacting to it. And they're reacting to it in a manner that if we don't talk about it, maybe it's not real. I'm telling you, it's real. So to go back to, believe me, I fully understand the people's reaction to West Greenwich. It is. I know a lot of people say, as a parent, I don't think you need to. I don't think you need to be a parent. It's still unimaginable to think that someone would do that. It's hard to process how someone would do that to a child. I find it impossible to process. I do, how someone could do that to their own child. But I also want to be very clear about something. That was not God's will. These people that say, rest in peace, let them rest in peace, don't talk about it, let them rest in peace. They're not resting in peace. That was a decision made on earth by man's free will. Was God there? Yes, God was there. God was trying to comfort that family, as they must have been terrified in that moment. God was with those first responders, trying to process and deal. Very, very difficult scene. But that is not God's will. I see people put things, hey, God's will. That is not God's will. We're praying to different gods if you think that is not. No, they're supposed to be here on earth. They were crying. They were crying arriving in heaven. And then God was trying to comfort them in their souls forever and eternity. But no, they're not resting in peace. They are a horrific, extremely violent act was committed, but it was committed by man. After many times, when I post on that sometimes police are looking for a suspect, for instance, the young man, the 18-year-old that was shot and killed on his birthday, and I was putting on a platform that they really come out of the woodwork is Instagram. And I was posting that the police were looking for information on it, on who did it. And it was eye-opening. The people saying, don't even talk about it. Let him rest in peace. Forget about it. Let it go. It's foreign to me. And in that particular case, that was in South Providence last August, an 18-year-old was shot and killed on his birthday. And we're to believe he's in a better place. He's not in a better place. He's 18. He belongs here on earth. Let him rest in peace. Let it go. Don't even talk about it. That's their reaction to it. It's foreign. I don't believe that. I don't agree with it. And I certainly don't believe that. So for someone to react in that manner, it doesn't serve any type of purpose like that. No, but just let's be very clear. That is not God's will. There are people that say, sometimes it's very difficult. Something like this happens to understand God's plan. That is not God's plan. I see other people. Just remember, God wouldn't give us anything that he doesn't think we can handle. That is not the case in any way. No, no, that was not supposed to happen. Same thing. New Orleans, that wasn't God's will. That wasn't all. That's all part of God's plan. No, it's not. That maniac drove his truck onto the sidewalk with a gun and was shooting and killing people. That wasn't God's plan. No, God was with those. God is with the doctors and nurses that are tending to those that lived. God is trying to comfort the family members who lost loved ones. God was with the first responders who had to respond to that scene. God didn't have anything to do with that. They're not in a better place. Some people have very twisted views of what God is. And I can assure you, if you think that any of these heinous acts are all part of God's plan, we don't pray to the same God. No, wrongo. That's insanity. I remember being at Bishop Hendricken. It was Brother Muller used to say, used to drive him nuts. He was from the Bronx. And he'd say a drunk driver would careen onto the sidewalk and take out a 5-year-old. And he was saying these old Irish women would be like, God's plan. It is not God's plan. What is wrong with you? What is wrong with you? Who would think that? Wrong. I still remember Brother Muller. He taught religion. Man's free will. It was the man that decided to drink. It was the man that got behind the wheel. It was the man that drove down the street. It's nothing to do. Why are you blaming? I also have a problem with those that say that's just evil. It's kind of like the New Orleans. Oh, that's just evil. That's not even an act by a man. No, it was actually a human that did it. And New Orleans let their guard down and they didn't get those barriers working properly. I'm not saying it would have stopped it, but it certainly made it a little bit easier for them. So no, it's so easy in these situations. I admit it is easy to just say evil because that's how some people just want to rationalize it. And I get that. I get that. Like 9/11, right? The terrorists hijacking the plane, flying the plane into the tower. It's very easy for us to just say, well, that's evil. It's true. It is evil, actually. But there were also people that actually thought they were accomplishing something. I don't want to get into a whole thing about it, but my point is, it can't just be that. It's too easy. And in this particular situation, we may find out whether or not there were red flags, whether or not someone could have said something, whether or not someone could have done something. Maybe someone left that individual and said, boy, that was odd. How's so-and-so? I don't know. He was acting very odd. He was saying some odd things. I don't know. Folks, this portion of our program brought to you by JD's Lawn Care and Tree Service. Now remember, I know it's wintertime, but this is a good time to get some of those trees trimmed. JD Lawn Care and Tree Service. Call them 401-441-0154, 401-441-0154, JD Lawn Care and Tree Service. Well, folks, good afternoon. 1:57 on this Monday. Yes, we'll be doing Road Patrol live later, and we'll wait and see what type of an update. As of right now, I don't know what the West Greenwich Police, West Greenwich Police really taking the lead, what their plan is. Maybe they're going to have a press conference. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're just going to release a statement. I want to also repeat, I don't expect when something like that happens, and I would think the families come together. It's difficult, if not impossible, to process something like that. If the public, if we talk about it, these people leave the family alone. Don't talk about it. Well, I mean, no one's knocking on the family's door. No one's calling them. No one is saying, "Can I get a comment from you?" I would just suggest, and maybe you know them, in any situation, because this won't be the last. If there's a tragedy, I mean, I don't think the family should be on social media. I don't think the family should be reading various things. I think the family should be together and grieving and receiving counseling and so forth. Well, if you remember, the whole nutcase in Johnston, that guy that he killed his own mother, he shot the neighbor and then took off, and then Cranston police put him down. Um, I think the family involved with that should certainly get together and grieve and talk about it. But I don't think it precludes or does anything if no one else talks about it. All right, folks, we will be live later. We will be doing Road Patrol Live later. In the meantime, listen to the radio, listen for the 2 o'clock news. We'll be back tomorrow.